Make sure this thing's actually recording. Can't let it happen twice in a row. So today we are working on Secret Tunnel and Geodites. This is going to be a 2-page spread. So mixing up a yellow-brown color, I'm going to go ahead and weather both of these pages. And these 2 pages aren't going to have too much weathering going on, so I'm going to try to keep it light. Just going to touch up those lines real quick. Sometimes I lose my guidelines. And that first layer is looking pretty good. Probably only going to leave it at the 1. This is a technique I did earlier in the journal. It was the invisible wizard. It worked out last time, but we had a much bigger image to work with. So we'll have to see what happens here. But it's pretty simple. You're just going to cut out an image, and then using some painter's tape, you're just going to go ahead and place that down. And why painter's tape? It's less likely to rip the page. Now you don't actually have to use tape, but I do just to keep it from moving around. And for this, I'm going to be using a light brown, a whitish tan, and a little bit of an orange. And so the goal here is to have as little acrylic as possible on the brush. And we're just going to want to dry brush that on. And what this is going to do is it's going to leave just like an imprint of the image. It's an easy way to get really crispy lines, especially when done correctly. You know, I hate it. So it looks kind of bad right now. That doesn't look like a hand, so I'm just going to try to hand paint some stuff on there. Well, it does look better. Like if you compare it back and forth. Let it go, doesn't have to be perfect. It's good enough. And so now we're gonna go ahead and add a little more depth to these areas, but they're gonna be really subtle shadow changes. It's just there just so that the drawings pop a little bit more off the page. This time we actually have red and blue that's gonna be smudged onto this page. The far right side looks like it has a slight blue tint to the ink. So the same way we've been smudging that red ink, I'm just going to do it there too. And using that same light brown color, I'm going to go ahead and fill in the cave drawings. And those cave drawings don't have any outlines on them, so we're going to have to be really clean with our line work here. I didn't intend for it, but the pencil work kind of makes a slight outline on it. Very subtle. And for this, we're just going to go ahead and start with a light gray pass and work our way to darker colors. Mosquito bit me when I was sleeping. If you don't know, this has already been like 2 days for me. Mosquito's a coward. And using some watered down white acrylic, I'm going to go ahead and start building a different layer for those crystals. Just going to add a slight tinge to them just so they're a little bit different than the background. Going to add a little reddish brown in here inside the mouth. And I'm going to keep building on those white layers. I want the eyes to almost look like they're glowing. I'm just gonna focus on this side for a little bit. Move the book from my armrest. And for the outlines here, I'm gonna be using a 0.5. And it's very faint, but the reference does show a small outline around those eyes. And with that, I can go ahead and finish up all my highlights. As I finalize everything, I use less and less water to dilute the acrylic. The title for this one's a little strange. I almost want to say it's geometric. I don't know if I'm using that word correctly, but it has a lot of straight edges to it. And for this one, I'm going to be using a 0.8 pen. I debated using a ruler for this, but I don't think he would necessarily have a ruler with him on hand. Also, I don't own a ruler, so you think I would. And using that same 0.8 pen, I'm going to go ahead and do that for the Secret Tunnel title. And I'm also going to go over it a couple times just to give it some weight. Secret Tunnel song keeps playing in my head. You see that swoosh? It's not supposed to be there, but I kind of like it. And let's see if it bled over. No, so we're good. Whenever I go over something way too many times, I always fear that it's going to bleed over into the next page. And that's not a problem if it's going forward in the book. It's only if I mess up a page backwards, which has happened on me a couple times. And then for those trees, I'm going to be using a 1. And then using that same number 1, I'm going to go ahead and outline everything. This whole drawing is going to be mostly black, so adding the outlines now is just going to help make everything look a lot nicer and cleaner. Not sure how I'm going to go about it, but I'm going to have to add a lot of texture so this doesn't look like a solid color. And I'm just going to finish off a few more notable shadows before doing the main show. I hate mosquitoes. And this is going to be the tricky part. For the most part, this is a solid black color. But if you look at the reference, it's not necessarily a solid color. It's got quite a bit of texture to it. So what's my plan here? I'm going to start by adding a solid layer of black. Afterwards, I'm going to add different layers of yellow and light browns. And for the more pronounced areas, I'm going to be using acrylic. This should give me a really nice pattern, very similar to the reference. You know, that doesn't look too bad. Now, the waterfall doesn't necessarily have a separate color, but I feel like adding a little bit of white will just help it stand out a little bit better. And so very similar, I'm just going to be watering down this acrylic and using less water for any highlighted areas. I always do that. I don't know why I keep doing that. And then here, I'm just touching up any of these little shadows. And then using some of the lighter acrylics, I'm just going to go ahead and clean up some of these lines. Thinking number 5 would be good here. And using a 0.5, I'm going to go ahead and fill in all the lines for the waterfall. And then using a dark gray, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of shadow to this waterfall. For the squares on the right side, I'm thinking of using this blue pen right here. Because it's not a light blue, it's a really dark blue. And so just gonna make sure the pen actually works because, and sometimes you just gotta scribble out some ink. But that does look good, so. And just using a standard Bic pen, I'm gonna go ahead and add in these little squares. And continuing the pattern, we're just going to be using a red Sharpie for this. So I was a little heavy-handed and I accidentally drew a line where a circle needed to be, so just a little bit of acrylic just to fix that. It's hardly noticeable, but it's noticeable to me. And now that I've given everything a chance to fully dry, I'm going to go ahead and add in the last little bit of highlights on this waterfall. And with that, we can go ahead and start writing in some of the text. Up here in the top right, we have cave handprint, and right underneath secret tunnel, it's going to read behind Tremblay's Falls. See, the problem I'm running into now is that this page is going to be really heavy on text, and I don't have enough room, so I'm going to be using a 02 pen for this. It's going to make the text really small, but I'll at least get everything in there. And the message of this page is talking about how Ford and Fiddleford went into the secret tunnels behind the waterfall, and they found themselves without any light. But luckily, McGucket was able to reignite their lantern by smacking 2 of these strange creatures with glowing eyes against each other, creating the spark that they needed.